It was one of those perfect summer evenings when the city felt alive with possibilities. The rooftop bar was packed with people laughing, talking, and enjoying the warm breeze that swept across the open terrace. String lights hung overhead, creating a magical glow against the darkening sky. Music played softly in the background, mixing with the sound of clinking glasses and cheerful conversations. Priya had come to celebrate her best friend's birthday. She wasn't really in the mood for parties these days. Her last relationship had ended badly a few months ago, and she was still picking up the pieces of her heart. But her friend had insisted, practically dragging her out of her apartment. "You need to get out and have some fun," her friend had said. So here she was, wearing a simple black dress and trying her best to smile and enjoy the evening. She had just finished her second glass of wine when it happened. The rooftop had these old wooden planks that weren't exactly even. Priya stepped on one that was slightly raised, and before she knew what was happening, her ankle twisted. She felt herself falling forward, her arms reaching out to grab onto something, anything. That's when she crashed straight into him. His hands caught her waist instantly, steadying her before she could hit the ground. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The music faded away. The voices around them became distant whispers. She looked up and found herself staring into the warmest brown eyes she had ever seen. He was tall, with dark hair, and a concerned expression that quickly melted into a gentle smile. "Whoa, are you okay?" he asked, his voice deep and genuinely worried. Priya felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Oh my God! I'm so sorry. I didn't see that plank and I'm really clumsy sometimes." He laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made you want to laugh too. She tested her ankle carefully. It was a little sore, but nothing serious. "I think I'm fine. Just my pride that's damaged." "Well, your pride will recover," he said with a grin. "But let me get you some water, just to be safe. And maybe you should sit down for a minute." Before she could protest, he was already guiding her to a quieter corner of the rooftop, his hand gently on her elbow. He disappeared for a moment and returned with a cold bottle of water. Priya's friend appeared beside them, eyes wide with curiosity. "Priya, are you okay?" "I saw you fall," her friend said, then looked at the stranger with interest. "Oh, hi there. I'm her friend. And you are?" "I'm Ravi," he said, shaking her hand politely. "Just happened to be in the right place, at the right time." Her friend grinned mischievously. "Well, thank you for catching our Priya. She tends to be accident-prone when she's nervous." She winked, and then added, "I'll leave you two to chat. Priya, come find me if you need anything." And just like that, her friend vanished back into the crowd, leaving Priya alone with this stranger named Ravi. She took a sip of water, feeling awkward and grateful at the same time. "So," Ravi said, leaning against the railing beside her, "is it true? Are you accident-prone when you're nervous?" Priya laughed despite herself. "She's exaggerating. I'm just not great in heels on uneven surfaces. Or maybe I've had a bit too much wine." "Fair enough," he said. "So what brings you here tonight? Besides testing the structural integrity of this rooftop?" She smiled at his joke. "My friend's birthday. She dragged me here because apparently I've been hibernating too much lately. What about you?" "Reader, bitter-o-tech." She smiled at his joke. "Work thing," Ravi explained. "I'm an architect, and I'm in the city for a project. My colleague invited me along tonight. Said I needed to see more of the city than just construction sites and my hotel room." They started talking, and somehow, the minutes just melted away. Ravi asked about her work, and she told him about her job as a graphic designer. He seemed genuinely interested, asking questions about her projects and her creative process. She found herself relaxing, laughing at his stories about difficult clients and building disasters. An hour passed, then another. The crowd around them thinned as people started leaving, but neither of them noticed. They had moved to the edge of the rooftop, where the view of the city stretched out before them. The lights of countless buildings twinkled like earthbound stars. "This is my favorite thing about being in different cities," Ravi said, looking out at the view. "Every skyline tells a different story." "That's a beautiful way to look at it," Priya said softly. "I've lived here my whole life, and sometimes I forget to actually see it." He turned to look at her. "Maybe you just needed a reason to look again." 4. After. 4. After. There was something in the way he said it, in the way he looked at her, that made Priya's heart skip a beat. This wasn't just friendly conversation anymore. There was something else happening here. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. Real, genuine connection. When the bar started closing and the staff began cleaning up around them, they finally realized how late it had gotten. Their friends had long since left. They exchanged awkward glances, neither wanting to say goodbye. "So," Ravi said slowly, "this might sound crazy, but I'm not ready for this conversation to end. Would you maybe want to walk for a bit? I promise I'll make sure you avoid all dangerous planks and uneven surfaces." Priya knew she should probably say no. She should go home, be sensible, protect her still healing heart. But something about this night, about this person, felt different. It felt like taking a chance might actually be worth it. "You know what?" she said, surprising herself. "I'd really like that." His face lit up with a smile that made her stomach flutter. And just like that, the night that had started with an embarrassing stumble was turning into something she would remember forever. The city looked completely different at night when you weren't rushing to get somewhere. Priya and Ravi walked slowly through the lamplit streets, their footsteps echoing softly on the pavement. The summer air was still warm, carrying the faint smell of street food and flowers from nearby planters. Most shops were closed, their windows dark, but a few late-night cafes still glowed with warm light. They walked without any real direction, just following wherever the conversation led them. Ravi told her about growing up in a small town, how he used to sketch buildings in his notebook during boring classes. "My teachers thought I wasn't paying attention," he said with a laugh. "But I was actually designing my dream house over and over again." Priya shared her own stories about discovering art as a kid, how she used to draw on every surface her parents would allow. "Once, I even drew on the wall behind my bed," she admitted. "My mother was so angry, but my dad just laughed and said, at least I had stayed inside the lines." They found themselves at a small park with a fountain in the center. The water sparkled under the streetlights, creating dancing shadows on the ground. They sat on a bench, and the conversation shifted to deeper things. "Can I ask you something?" Ravi said, his tone more serious now. "Earlier, your friend said you'd been hibernating. What did she mean by that?" Priya hesitated. She didn't usually open up to strangers about her personal life, but something about Ravi made her feel safe. "I got out of a relationship a few months ago," she said quietly. 3 years together. And then it just fell apart. He wanted different things. I wanted different things. We tried to make it work. But sometimes, trying isn't enough. Ravi nodded thoughtfully. "That must have been really hard." "It was," she admitted. "The worst part wasn't even the breakup itself. It was feeling like I'd wasted 3 years of my life. Like I should have seen it coming sooner, ended it earlier. I kept thinking about all the time I lost." "I don't think time spent with someone you cared about is ever wasted," Ravi said gently. "Even if it didn't work out, I bet you learned things about yourself. About what you want, what you don't want. That's valuable." Priya looked at him with surprise. Most people either told her to just get over it, or said she was better off without her ex. But Ravi's response felt different. It felt understanding, without being dismissive. What about you? She asked. Any heartbreak stories? He smiled sadly. Nothing as dramatic as yours. I've been so focused on my career that I haven't really made time for relationships. My last girlfriend broke up with me because she said I was married to my work. She wasn't wrong. I kept choosing projects over plans with her, deadlines over date nights. By the time I realized what I was doing, she was already gone. Do you regret it? Priya asked. Sometimes, he said honestly. But I also learned that I need to find better balance. Work is important to me, but it can't be everything. Life is meant to be lived, not just worked through. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the fountain. Then Ravi suddenly stood up and held out his hand. Come on. I saw a 24-hour diner a few blocks back. I'm starving. And I bet you are too. Priya laughed and took his hand. How did you know? Because we've been walking and talking for almost 2 hours, and I heard your stomach growl about 10 minutes ago. He teased. The diner was one of those classic places with red vinyl booths and a checkered floor. They slid into a booth near the window, and a tired-looking waitress brought them menus. They ordered coffee and a plate of fries to share, neither of them wanting a full meal this late at night. Okay, quick-fire questions, Ravi said, stealing a fry from the plate between them. Favorite movie? That's so hard. Priya protested. Can I pick 3? No. Nope. 1. Come on. What's the movie you could watch over and over? She thought for a moment. Before Sunrise. It's about 2 people who meet on a train and spend one night walking around Vienna, just talking. They have this amazing connection, but they don't know if they'll ever see each other again. Ravi's eyes lit up. I love that movie. The whole trilogy is beautiful. But the first one is special because of that uncertainty, right? That feeling of trying to fit a lifetime of connection into a few hours. Exactly, Priya said excitedly. Most people I know think it's boring because nothing really happens. But everything happens. Every conversation, every moment matters, because they know it might be all they get. Well, now I have to ask, Ravi said, his voice quieter. Your turn for a question. Priya wrapped her hands around her warm coffee mug. Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? Honestly, I don't know if it's about the place, he said thoughtfully. I think it's more about finding somewhere that feels like home. I've lived in so many cities for work, and they all have beautiful things about them. But none of them have felt like the place I want to stay forever. I'm still looking for that feeling of belonging somewhere. That's actually really beautiful, Priya said softly. Most people just name a city or a country. What about you? He asked. I've always lived here, she said. This city is home for me. But lately, I've been wondering if maybe I've been too comfortable. Maybe I should try living somewhere else, even just for a little while. See what else is out there. They talked about dreams and fears, favorite foods and terrible jobs they'd had when they were younger. Ravi told her about the time he accidentally knocked over an architectural model in front of his entire firm. Priya told him about the presentation where her computer crashed, and she had to pitch her entire design concept from memory. The hours slipped by unnoticed. Other customers came and went. The waitress refilled their coffee cups multiple times, smiling knowingly at them. Neither Priya nor Ravi wanted the night to end. It felt like they were in a bubble, separate from the rest of the world, where time moved differently. Finally, as dawn started to lighten the sky outside the diner windows, they realized they should probably go home. Ravi insisted on walking Priya to her apartment, even though it meant going out of his way. They stood outside her building, the early morning birds starting to sing in the trees. Priya felt exhausted, but also more awake than she'd felt in months. This was really nice, she said, feeling like those words couldn't possibly capture what the night had meant. It really was. Ravi agreed. He looked like he wanted to say something else, then hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Can I see you again? Maybe dinner tomorrow? Or today, technically, since it's already morning. But later today, after we've both slept? Priya's heart raced. She wanted to say yes immediately, but something made her pause. Can I ask you something first? How long are you in the city? Ravi's expression shifted slightly. 2 more weeks. My project ends, and then I go back home. 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. Priya felt her stomach sink. She'd just gotten her heart broken by investing years in the wrong person. Was she really going to risk it again with someone who would be leaving so soon? But then she looked at Ravi. Really. Looked at him. At the hope in his eyes. The genuine warmth in his smile. She thought about the conversation they'd just had, about not wasting time, about living life instead of hiding from it. Yes, she said, before she could talk herself out of it. His face broke into the biggest smile she'd seen from him all night. He pulled out his phone, and they exchanged numbers. Then, very gently, he leaned down and kissed her cheek. Get some sleep, Priya, he said softly. She watched him walk away down the street, the rising sun casting long shadows behind him. When she finally went inside and collapsed on her bed, she couldn't stop smiling. She knew this might not be smart. She knew she might get hurt again. But for the first time in months, she felt genuinely excited about something. Her phone buzzed just as she was drifting off to sleep. A text from Ravi. Already can't wait for later today. Sweet dreams. 7D. Ravi courted. Ravi courted. Ravi courted. Ravi courted. Ravi courted. Ravi courted. Priya hugged her phone to her chest and finally let herself fall asleep, her dreams full of possibility. The morning sun was too bright, but Priya didn't care. She'd only slept for 4 hours, but when her phone buzzed with Ravi's message, asking if she wanted to grab breakfast, she was out of bed in seconds. Something about this felt different from anything she'd experienced before. It felt urgent, like every moment mattered. They met at a small cafe that served the best pancakes in the neighborhood. Ravi was already there when she arrived. 2 coffees on the table, and that same warm smile on his face. I took a guess, and got you a cappuccino, he said. Was I right? Perfect guess, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. They ordered food, but neither of them ate much. They were too busy talking, laughing, stealing glances at each other when they thought the other wasn't looking. After breakfast, they didn't want to separate. Want to see the city through my eyes? Priya asked. I can show you the places tourists never find. That started what would become 13 days of being practically inseparable. Every morning, Ravi would text her something simple. Good morning. Thinking about you. Can't wait to see you today. And every morning, Priya would feel that same flutter in her chest. That same excitement she thought she'd lost the ability to feel. She took him to her favorite bookstore. A cramped little place that smelled like old paper and coffee. They spent hours browsing, pulling books off shelves and reading interesting passages to each other. Ravi found a book about architecture in ancient civilizations and got so excited explaining the engineering behind Roman aqueducts that the store owner had to gently remind them they were getting loud. They discovered they both loved terrible puns. Walking through the park, they started a competition to see who could make the other laugh harder with increasingly awful jokes. What do you call a fake noodle? Ravi asked. When Priya shrugged, he grinned and said, An impasta. She groaned, but couldn't stop laughing. One afternoon, Ravi brought her to the construction site where he was working. He put a hard hat on her head, adjusting it carefully, his fingers brushing her hair. You have to promise not to fall here, he teased. The planks are much more dangerous than at that rooftop bar. He showed her the blueprints, explaining his vision for the building with such passion that Priya found herself captivated. Not just by the designs, But by watching him light up when he talked about his work, she understood then what his ex-girlfriend had meant about him being married to his job. But she also saw something else. She saw someone who genuinely loved what he did, who put his heart into creating spaces where people would live and work and make memories. "Now you have to show me your work," Ravi insisted. So she took him to her small home studio, feeling nervous as he looked at her designs spread across her desk and pinned to her walls. He studied each one carefully, asking questions about her process, her inspiration. "These are incredible," he said finally. "You have such a unique style. It's bold, but also really warm somehow." They made it a game to try new foods from street vendors. Ravi was adventurous, willing to try anything once. They ate tacos from a cart at midnight, shared a container of mango sticky rice from a Thai vendor, tried a weird fusion dish that neither of them could identify, but that tasted surprisingly good. Evenings were spent on Priya's small balcony, talking about everything and nothing. They discussed their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Ravi told her about his parents, who had supported his decision to become an architect even when money was tight. Priya shared stories about her younger brother, who drove her crazy, but who she'd do anything for. "What scares you most?" Ravi asked one night, the city lights twinkling below them. Priya thought carefully. "Regret. Making the wrong choices and looking back, wishing I'd been braver." "What about you?" "Being alone," he said quietly. "Not just physically alone, but that feeling of going through life without anyone who really gets you, without someone to share it all with." She reached over and took his hand. "I get that." By the end of the first week, they both knew this was more than just a fun vacation romance. The feelings were real and growing stronger every day. But neither of them wanted to talk about what would happen when Ravi had to leave. It felt like acknowledging it would somehow make it more real, would ruin the perfect bubble they'd created. On day 10, everything changed. They were at Priya's apartment, cooking dinner together, or trying to. They kept getting distracted, bumping into each other in the small kitchen, laughing at their failed attempts to follow the recipe. At some point, Ravi pulled her close, flour somehow in her hair, and kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd been stealing kisses all week. Sweet ones in the park, playful ones when one of them won their ongoing pun war, tender ones when they said goodnight. But this kiss was different. This one was deeper, more honest. This one said all the things they'd been afraid to say out loud. They abandoned the cooking and moved to the couch, holding each other close. "I need to tell you something," Ravi said, his voice serious. "I'm falling for you, Priya. I know it's fast, and I know the timing is terrible, but I can't pretend this isn't happening. I'm falling for you too," she whispered. "And it terrifies me." They stayed up all night talking about what this meant, about the impossible situation they'd found themselves in, about whether feelings this strong could survive distance and time apart. Neither of them had answers, but at least they were being honest about it. The next morning felt different, heavier somehow. There were only 3 days left before Ravi had to leave. And suddenly, that fact was impossible to ignore. They tried to act normal, tried to enjoy their time together, but there was a shadow hanging over everything now. They visited the rooftop bar where they'd met, standing in the exact spot where Priya had fallen into his arms. "If I could go back to that moment," Ravi said, "I wouldn't change a single thing, except maybe I'd have asked for your number right then, given us more time." "We've made the most of the time we have," Priya said, but her voice was sad. That night, they had the conversation they'd been avoiding. Sitting on her balcony, wrapped in a blanket together, they finally talked about the future. "Long distance is hard," Priya said. "I've seen so many people try and fail." "I know," Ravi agreed. "And I'll be busy with work. You'll be busy with yours. Time zones, missed calls, plans that fall through. It would be difficult." Maybe it's better to just accept that this was beautiful while it lasted, Priya suggested, though saying the words felt like swallowing glass. Maybe trying to force it to continue would just ruin what we had. Ravi was quiet for a long time. Is that what you really want? Priya didn't know. Her head said yes. Said this was the smart choice. The safe choice. But her heart was screaming no, begging her not to let this go. I don't know what I want, she admitted. I just know that the thought of you leaving makes me feel sick. They decided to sleep on it. To make a decision after they'd both had time to think clearly. But that night, holding each other close, both of them knew the decision was probably already made. The practical choice, the safe choice, was to end things cleanly. To part as friends and cherish the memories. The next 2 days passed in a blur of bittersweet moments. They made lists of all their inside jokes, took photos to remember everything, tried to pack a lifetime of memories into 48 hours. They laughed, they cried, they held each other like they could somehow stop time if they just held on tight enough. On the last day, Priya drove Ravi to the airport. The car ride was quiet, neither of them trusting themselves to speak without breaking down. At the departures area, Ravi pulled his suitcase from the trunk and turned to face her. I need you to know something, he said, his voice thick with emotion. These 2 weeks with you have been the best of my life. Whatever happens next, wherever we both end up, I'll never forget this. I'll never forget you. Priya couldn't hold back her tears anymore. I'll never forget you either. They kissed one last time. And then, he was walking away, disappearing into the crowd of travelers. Priya sat in her car and cried until she had no tears left. Then she drove home, climbed into bed, and let herself fall apart. The apartment felt empty without him. Her balcony felt wrong. The city looked gray and lifeless. Everything reminded her of Ravi, of what they'd had and what they'd lost. When he texted to say he'd landed safely, she responded with a simple, I'm glad you made it okay. When he called the next day, she answered, but kept the conversation short. When he suggested a video call, she made excuses about being busy with work. After 2 weeks of trying to maintain contact, the messages became less frequent. Ravi seemed to understand that she was pulling away, and he didn't push. Maybe he was pulling away too. Maybe it was just too painful for both of them. Priya threw herself into her work, taking on extra projects, staying late at the office. Her friends worried about her, but she insisted she was fine. Just busy. Just focused on her career. She almost convinced herself it was true. 1 month after Ravi left, Priya had started to accept that it was really over. She'd started to believe that maybe she could move on. That maybe the pain would eventually fade into just a bittersweet memory of a beautiful summer. And then, on a rainy Tuesday night, her doorbell rang. Priya wasn't expecting anyone. She was in her pajamas, eating ice cream straight from the container, and watching a movie she wasn't really paying attention to. The doorbell ringing startled her so much she almost dropped the ice cream. She padded to the door in her bare feet, annoyed at the interruption. She wasn't in the mood for delivery people or neighbors asking to borrow something. She opened the door ready to politely send whoever it was away. And there he was. Ravi stood in her doorway, completely soaked from the rain. His hair was plastered to his forehead, water dripping down his face. He was holding a single sunflower, which looked as bedraggled as he did. His eyes were uncertain, hopeful, scared, all at once. For a moment, Priya couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She just stood there, frozen, wondering if she was imagining this. Hi, Ravi said quietly. His voice was exactly as she remembered it. What are you doing here? Priya finally managed to ask. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might explode. You're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be here. One. I know, he said. Can I come in? I'm getting your doorway wet, and I have a lot to tell you." She stepped aside wordlessly, and he came in, leaving a trail of water droplets. She handed him a towel, still too shocked to process what was happening. He dried his face and hair, then held out the sunflower to her. "I remembered you said these were your favorite," he said. "The flower shop was closing, and this was the last one they had. I know it looks a little rough, but it reminded me of us. Still beautiful, even when life gets messy." Priya took the flower, her hands trembling. "Ravi, what's going on? Why are you here?" He took a deep breath. "I couldn't do it, Priya. I couldn't just let you go. I tried. I really tried to move on, to accept that we were just a brief, beautiful thing. But every day, all I could think about was you. Every morning I'd wake up and want to text you. Every time something funny happened, you were the person I wanted to tell. Every time I saw something beautiful, I wished you were there to see it with me. But your job, your life, everything is in your city," Priya said, confused and hopeful and terrified all at once. "I applied for a transfer," Ravi said, "to the branch here. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to get your hopes up if it didn't work out. But it did. They approved it. I start in 2 weeks." Priya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "You did what? You changed your entire life? Ravi, that's insane. What if this doesn't work out between us? What if you end up regretting it?" "Then I'll deal with it," he said firmly. "But the only thing I regret is the last month we spent apart. The only thing I regret is not fighting for this sooner. Priya, when you fell into my arms that night, it felt like the universe was giving me a gift, and I'm not going to waste it by being too scared to take a risk." "But what if I'm not worth it?" Priya whispered, her old insecurities rising up. "What if I'm not enough to make up for leaving your life behind?" Ravi stepped closer to her, gently taking her hands in his. "You are worth it. These 2 weeks we had together were worth more than years of just going through the motions. You make me want to be better. You make me want to find that balance I talked about between work and life. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me feel like I'm finally where I'm supposed to be." Tears were streaming down Priya's face now. "I was so scared," she admitted. "After my last relationship, I was terrified of getting hurt again. When you left, I convinced myself it was better to let you go than to risk more pain. But this last month has been miserable. I missed you every single day. So what do you say?" Ravi asked softly. "Can we try this? For real this time? No expiration date? No countdown clock? Just us? Figuring it out together?" Priya looked at him standing in her living room, dripping wet and holding out his heart to her. She thought about all the reasons this could go wrong. But then she thought about how alive she'd felt during those 2 weeks with him, how much joy he'd brought into her world, how much she'd laughed and smiled and felt like herself again. Sometimes the safe choice wasn't really safe at all. Sometimes playing it safe just meant missing out on the things that made life worth living. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff and flying at the same time. "Yes. Let's try this." Ravi's face broke into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. She laughed through her tears, holding onto him tightly. "You're getting me all wet," she protested weakly. "I don't care," he said, setting her down but not letting go. "I'm just so happy right now." They stood in her living room, holding each other, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. Outside, the rain continued to pour, but inside, everything felt warm and right and full of possibility. "I can't believe you moved here for me," Priya said, pulling back to look at him. "That's the most romantic and slightly crazy thing anyone has ever done." "Well, You did fall into my arms at a rooftop bar, Ravi pointed out. I figured we were already starting with romantic and slightly crazy. She laughed and kissed him, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. It felt like finding something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Over the next few days, they talked about everything they needed to talk about expectations and fears and what they both wanted from this relationship. Ravi found a temporary place to stay until he could find an apartment. Priya helped him explore neighborhoods, pointing out the good coffee shops and warning him about the streets that flooded when it rained. They took things slowly this time, learning each other in a deeper way. Not the intense, rushed getting to know you of those first 2 weeks, but the steady, comfortable intimacy of two people building something real. Ravi met Priya's friends, who immediately loved him. Her best friend pulled her aside at dinner one night and whispered, "This one's different. Don't let him go." Priya introduced him to her family, who were skeptical at first, but warmed up when they saw how he looked at their daughter. How he made her laugh. There were challenges, of course. Ravi's new job was demanding, and there were times when he fell back into old patterns of working too much. Priya had to learn to speak up when she felt neglected, instead of quietly pulling away like she had in her last relationship. They had their first fight about something stupid, and Priya was terrified it meant they were falling apart. But they talked through it, learned from it, came out stronger. 3 months after Ravi moved to the city, they were having dinner at that same diner where they'd shared fries on their first night together. The waitress recognized them and smiled. "You two again? Still can't get enough of each other, huh?" "Never," Ravi said, reaching across the table to take Priya's hand. "I've been thinking," Priya said carefully, "about finding a bigger apartment." Ravi looked at her, understanding immediately what she was suggesting. "Are you sure? It's only been a few months." "I'm sure," she said. "Why wait, when we both know this is what we want? Why waste time being apart, when we could be building a life together?" "Okay then," Ravi said, his eyes shining. "Let's find our home." They clinked their coffee mugs together, making a toast to their future, to taking chances, to falling into each other's arms, literally and figuratively, and choosing to stay there. Outside the diner window, the city lights sparkled against the dark sky. The same city where they'd met, where they'd fallen in love, where they were now choosing to build their life together. It wasn't perfect. There would be hard days ahead, challenges they couldn't predict, but they would face them together, and that made all the difference. 6 months after that rainy night when Ravi showed up at her door, Priya and Ravi were moving into their first apartment together. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and they were surrounded by boxes, some marked with Priya's neat handwriting and others with Ravi's messier scrawl. The apartment wasn't huge, but it had big windows that let in lots of light and a small balcony where they could have their morning coffee. It was on the 4th floor of an old building with character, the kind of place that had good bones, as Ravi liked to say. He'd already started talking about little improvements they could make, ways to make the space truly theirs. "Where do you want this box?" asked Priya's brother, carrying in a heavy container marked kitchen stuff. "Just put it on the counter," Priya called out. "We'll sort through everything later." Her friends and family had shown up to help with the move. Her best friend was organizing the bathroom, complaining cheerfully about how many products Priya owned. Ravi's parents had driven in from his hometown, excited to see where their son was starting his new life. His mother kept hugging Priya and telling her how happy she was to finally have a daughter. "Your mom is so sweet," Priya whispered to Ravi as they unpacked books in what would be their living room. "But she keeps calling me her daughter, and I don't want her to be disappointed if—" "If what?" Ravi interrupted gently. "I know we've only been together for 6 months officially, but I knew from that first night that you were going to be important in my life. I know where this is going." Priya felt her cheeks warm. They hadn't talked explicitly about marriage or long-term plans, both of them wanting to just enjoy the present. But hearing him say it so confidently made her heart feel full. "You sound pretty sure of yourself," she teased, trying to cover her emotion. "I am. he said simply, kissing her forehead. But we don't have to rush anything. We've got all the time in the world now. By late afternoon, most of the boxes were unpacked, at least the essential ones. The bed was set up, towels were in the bathroom. The kitchen was functional. Their friends and family started leaving one by one, hugging them goodbye and making them promise to host a proper housewarming party soon. Finally, it was just the two of them. They stood in the middle of their living room, looking at the organized chaos around them. Half-empty boxes, furniture that needed to be arranged better, pictures that needed to be hung, but it was theirs. We did it, Priya said softly. We actually have a home together. We do, Ravi agreed. He walked over to one of his boxes and pulled out a framed photograph. I've been saving this. I think it should be the first thing we hang up. It was a photo from the rooftop bar, taken on the night they met. Priya's friend had snapped it without them noticing. In the picture, they were standing by the railing, talking and laughing, completely absorbed in each other. The city lights twinkled behind them, and there was something magical about the whole scene. I didn't know this picture existed, Priya said, taking it from him. Your friend sent it to me a few weeks ago. She said she knew the moment she took it that we were going to be something special. They found the perfect spot for it on the wall by the entrance, where they'd see it every time they came home. Ravi carefully hammered in a nail, while Priya held the frame. When it was hung, they stepped back to admire it. There, Ravi said. Now it's really our home. They ordered pizza because neither of them had the energy to cook. They sat on the floor of their empty living room, the pizza box between them, eating straight from the box, like they had eaten fries from a shared plate that first night. Remember when we were in that diner at 3 a.m, Priya said. I never imagined that night would lead to this. I think I did, Ravi admitted. Or at least, I hoped it would. There was something about you. Even from that first moment, when you crashed into me, I just knew you were going to change my life. I almost didn't say yes when you asked to see me again, Priya confessed. I was so scared. After my ex, I'd convinced myself that being careful was the same as being smart. That protecting my heart meant not risking it at all. What changed your mind? Ravi asked. Honestly? You looked so hopeful standing there outside my building that morning, and I realized that being scared was going to make me miss out on something potentially amazing. I decided that taking a chance on you was less scary than always wondering, what if? I'm glad you took that chance, Ravi said. I'm glad I took the chance to come back. When I showed up at your door in the rain, I was terrified you'd turn me away, that you'd tell me I was crazy for giving up my life there. You weren't giving it up, Priya said. You were trading one life for a better one. At least, I hope it's better. It is, Ravi assured her. The job here is actually better than my old one. The projects are more interesting. And my boss isn't constantly breathing down my neck. Plus, I get to come home to you every night. That alone makes everything worth it. They finished their pizza and cleaned up the paper plates. The apartment was quiet now, just the two of them, and all their combined belongings creating a shared space. Priya found a box labeled Memories and opened it curiously. Inside were things she'd saved from their relationship so far. Movie ticket stubs from their dates. The dried sunflower Ravi had brought her that rainy night. Napkins from restaurants where they'd had meaningful conversations. Printouts of text messages that had made her smile. A terrible drawing Ravi had made of her when they'd tried an art class together. You kept all of this? Ravi asked, looking over her shoulder. Of course I did, Priya said. Every moment with you has felt important, worth remembering. Ravi reached into his own box and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. He handed it to her with a slightly embarrassed smile. I made you something. Well, designed something. I was going to wait for a special occasion, but I think this counts. Priya unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a beautiful wooden box with intricate carved details. When she opened it, she saw that it was lined with soft velvet. But what made her gasp was the inside of the lid. Burned into the wood was a detailed sketch of the rooftop bar where they'd met, with two small figures standing together. "Ravi, this is incredible," she breathed. "You made this?" "I designed it, and a friend who does woodworking made it for me," he explained. "I thought you could use it to keep all those memories you've been collecting." "Our memories." Priya felt tears starting to form. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." She carefully transferred all her saved items into the box. The ticket stubs, the dried flour, everything fit perfectly. It was like Ravi had known exactly what she needed. As the evening turned to night, they moved to the balcony. They didn't have furniture out there yet, so they sat on the floor with their backs against the wall, looking at the city spread out before them. It was the same city where they'd met, where they'd fallen in love. But seeing it from their own balcony felt different somehow. More permanent. More real. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't tripped that night?" Priya wondered aloud. "If I'd been more careful, if I'd been watching where I was going?" "All the time," Ravi admitted. She laughed and pushed his shoulder playfully. "I'm not clumsy. That plank was uneven." "Sure, blame the plank," he teased. Then his tone turned more serious. "But really, I do think about it. How many moments like that do we miss in life? How many potential connections do we walk past because we're too distracted or too scared or too busy? We were lucky that night. Lucky that you fell, lucky that I was there to catch you, lucky that we both chose to take a chance." "I don't think it was just luck," Priya said thoughtfully. "I think we were both ready for something real. If we'd met a year earlier, when I was still with my ex or when you were too focused on work, it might not have worked. The timing had to be right too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker on as darkness fell. Someone in a nearby apartment was playing music. Car horns honked in the distance. The city was alive and moving all around them, but up on their balcony, they were in their own little world. "What are you thinking about?" Ravi asked, noticing Priya had gotten quiet. "I'm thinking about how happy I am," she said simply, "and about how scared I was to feel this happy. I spent so long protecting myself that I almost missed out on you. On this, I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you didn't give up on us, even when I was pulling away." "I couldn't give up," Ravi said. Priya leaned her head on his shoulder. "Promise me something? Anything. Promise that when things get hard, because they will sometimes, we'll remember this. We'll remember how much we wanted this. We'll remember that we chose each other, even when it would have been easier not to." "I promise," Ravi said solemnly. "And I have a promise I want from you too." "What's that?" "Promise me that you'll always tell me when you're scared or worried or upset. Don't pull away like you did when I left. Let me in, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." "I promise," Priya said. "I'm still learning how to do that, but I promise I'll try." They made a pact right there on their balcony. To always be honest with each other. To make their relationship a priority, even when work got busy or life got stressful. To never go to bed angry. To keep making each other laugh. To have adventures together. To build a life that was full of love and joy and meaning. As they sat there planning their future, Priya thought about how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been heartbroken and afraid, convinced that love was just a way to get hurt. Now she was sitting on her own balcony with someone who loved her completely, planning a future she was genuinely excited about. "Hey," Ravi said suddenly, "want to know something funny?" "What?" "You know how we joke about telling our grandkids that we met because you're clumsy?" "Yeah?" "I was thinking, what if we really do get to tell our grandkids that story someday? What if this really is the beginning of forever?" Ride. Number 4. Ride. What if this really is the beginning of forever? Priya smiled, her heart swelling with hope and happiness. "I think that sounds perfect." They stayed on the balcony long into the night, talking and dreaming and planning. They talked about the trips they wanted to take, the traditions they wanted to start, the life they wanted to build together. They talked about getting a dog someday, about learning to cook better, about all the little things that make a house a home. When they finally went inside, exhausted but happy, Priya took one last look at the photo hanging by the door, the picture of two people who'd just met, who had no idea what was coming next, who were just beginning a journey together. She thought about that night, about falling into a stranger's arms and finding something unexpected. She thought about all the fears she'd overcome, all the risks she'd taken, all the moments of courage that had led her here. And she was grateful. Grateful for every single moment, even the painful ones, because they'd all been part of the journey that brought her home. As she climbed into bed next to Ravi in their new apartment, their first night in their shared home, Priya realized something important. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you're not looking for them. Sometimes love finds you when you're not ready for it. Sometimes you have to fall before someone can catch you. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, the person who catches you becomes the person you build your whole life with. "Good night," Ravi whispered, pulling her close. "Good night," she whispered back. "And thank you." "For what?" "For catching me. For not letting me go. For choosing me." "Always," he said. "Always and forever." And as they drifted off to sleep in their new home, surrounded by boxes and memories and dreams of the future, Priya smiled. The night that had started with a stumble had turned into the greatest adventure of her life, and she couldn't wait to see what came next.